Welcome to Episode 1 of Where in the World, Season 3, the detailed showcase of cities and locations that have been visited in the Arcane Adventures campaign setting. For Season 3, we follow the story as it unfolds within the nation of Esmeen, a country that neighbors Bupilisu to the east and the Winsau Empire to the southeast across Disminster Depths. As always, in each episode, we'll have a map that details the general location of the place we are talking about during today's episode. Let's jump right in to Episode 1 of Season 3, Where in the World? Temclif. Officially the smallest civilization within Esmeen, with about 150 citizens, and situated in the Illicara Mountains between the Great Fields and Disminster Swamps. This tiny village is, perhaps, the most peaceful settlement in all of Esmeen. The small village of Temclif, with its tall firs and pines, the log cabins built adjacent to one another, and the ever snow-laden rooftops of the houses, is what anyone would call a sight to see. The Dividend Research Lab sits mostly quiet in the distance, about half a mile up the snowy mountain face. With temperatures hovering at about 30 degrees in the summer and -15 in the winter, the snow throughout Temclif rarely melts. Instead, the city is built with a slight, stilted elevation, keeping it above the deep snow. Aside from the small bit of logging that the village does for construction, the largest export of Temclif is ice. The snow under the stilted houses of the village is shoveled, compressed, and cut up into small pieces, known as ice lines, which are great for keeping things cooler across the warmer region of Esmeen. Once to twice a month, a caravan of low-ranking Esmeen troops and some workers make their way to Temclif to export the ice lines in exchange for important wares that the village needs, mostly food and survival supplies. Most of the working citizens of Temclif are employed by this trade system. Despite being crafted and constructed from just the surrounding trees, the architecture of the cabins and houses that dot Temclif are some of the most intricately hand-carved and constructed styles in this region. The multi-level houses that rise from the surrounding forest, accompanied by the soft light of lanterns and fireplaces beaming from the windows, make the view of the village breathtaking. For most of the year, the mountains and forest are obscured by low-hanging gray clouds. If one is ever so lucky, however, there are a handful of occurrences every year that the clouds clear out and allow the light of Anaris to radiate down, creating a glistening and twinkling show of illuminated snowflakes. Outsiders often comment there is nothing to do in such a small town aside from work and rest. But the citizens of Temclif know this is simply not the case. Every month, the entire town takes off work to participate in the regular Sparkle Slope sledding competition. Citizens craft elaborate sleds and send participants racing down a toboggan sleigh. Of course, starting from the upper ridge and winding nearly a mile down the slopes until finishing at the steps of the general store at the base of the town. Starting at the age of 9 with no age limit or age cap, anyone is allowed to take their chances at being the first sled down the mountain and taking home the Sparkle Slope sledding trophy for that month. Looking over the city, on the northeastern ridge, the quiet and clearly vacant Dividend Research Lab stands. The original manor was built by the Scilius Tim of the Tim family, where the village derives its name. After the Tim family moved away many years ago, the manor sat dormant and vacant. Citizens could never afford to purchase the expansive manor, so it was left alone. In 7281, the nation of Esmeen took possession of the property and remodeled it to become the Dividend Research Lab, hoping to find some way to militarize the ice lines that the city creates and use them in war. The research center, however, never found an effective way to do so. So in 7298, the research lab closed down and the employees left for other projects. Since then, The locals have avoided it, not wanting to get involved or in any trouble by sneaking around on previously owned government land. In 7302, however, a purchase was made by a third party to acquire the old lab building. The government got a nice sum for the property, and the land was now owned by a third party. But no one ever moved in, and to the locals' knowledge, the now owned property still remains vacant, even to this day. Occasionally, someone comes into town seeking the manor, and the locals are skeptical but willing to give directions, not really knowing what's happening in the old lab, and they have no interest in finding out. Little to anyone's knowledge, the locals or the nation of Esmond at large, the so-called third party that bought the estate was actually the Order of the Ten Sigils. Also not to anyone's knowledge, but the OTS has converted the basement and underground levels of the mansion into an organized OTS facility, known by the codename Divide. The ground floors of the estate remain vacant and largely unfurnished, but toiling away within the mountain below is an organization of wizards and sorcerers working to collect information to act in the interest of the public good, even if the public doesn't know that they are there. Two roads connect to Temclif, one being the most traveled one, that winds down the southern faces of the Illicara Mountains, before leading to a forked path that runs to Teltal and Ralcradon. The other road continues up the Illicara Mountains, and crosses over the Illica Pass, before descending on the northern face and entering Disminster Swamps, and ultimately to the town of Stiltswamp. The Illica Pass is known for its harsh winds and blizzard conditions, which is why many do not attempt to cross over it. We hope you've enjoyed this closer look at Temclif, and have found the details about it to your interest. The small settlement, despite its frigid weather, is full of the warmed hearts of the local residents that enjoy the simple lives that they lead. That's all for this episode of Where in the World. We'll see you next time.